Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renée Jordan, and today I'm going to continue with those set of questions that I started answering last week. And it's for those who are the DIY girlies, those who are doing it themselves, those lifelong learners in school, or those who are learning out on their own in terms of developing the skills that they want and need in order to move forward in their lives, whether it is at home, whether it's their own business, whether it's for work, or just because they love to learn. And so this episode is for you, and feel free to leave your questions in the comment section. Also, feel free to leave your stories and share advice to others who may identify with those who are feel like they're doing it themselves. Even if you're in school, sometimes you could feel like you're out here by yourself. And I want you to know that you're not alone and that you can do it. And I hope this Q&A helps somebody along their way. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first question that we have for today, what should I do when I feel behind because other students seem to already know what they're doing? Well, the thing is, learning is not a competition with other people per se. It is about making sure that you know what you need to understand and have the proper skills developed and all of that for yourself. So while you are in a classroom full of people, it's really about you. And I would encourage you not to concern yourself so much with what others know in terms of feeling like you're behind. When you show up to a class, you're showing up to learn. You're starting off with where you are. And for some people, that varies because they've had different experiences. But the thing is, your biggest concern should be the experiences that you have. What have you done before that was new to you and you were able to succeed? Don't worry about so much the next person in terms of, oh my gosh, I'm behind. They already have titration down to pack. They already know X, Y, and Z. It's not about that. It's about you being in a space of learning, coming in with your own experiences that are valid, being able to pull from those experiences, even if they are not the same. So let's say you learned something new before, but now you're learning something new in a different discipline. The fact that you were able to learn before means that you are giving yourself a new opportunity to do the same. And so, what you can do is see if they had other experiences. It's okay to talk to your classmates and say, hey, did you have any classes like this before? What helped you to feel prepared for this class? You might think that someone's well prepared, but they could just be just as scared as you. They could just be just as nervous as you. So feel free to talk to people and don't just make assumptions. And while some may have had background experiences for a particular class, perhaps that class requires a level of creativity, a level of nuance that you will need in order to be successful that the next person might struggle with. So everybody shows up with their own knowledge, their own skills, their own abilities, their own way of doing things and thinking things through. And if it seems as though others are ahead, that's okay. You're not there to learn for them. You're there to learn for yourself. And so it's okay to ask them questions to see how they got experience or if they've had experience with the material for class before. And perhaps you can learn something from them, whether that is where to go in terms of extra resources. Perhaps they know of a YouTube channel. Perhaps they know of a LinkedIn learning course or something on Udemy or somewhere else that can help you along your way. So it's okay to talk to people and see what their sources are, but know that it's okay to start with where you are, wherever that is when you come to a class. And the question is, do you have the skills necessary to be successful in that class? So, was there a prerequisite course? And if there was a prerequisite course, how did you perform in that course? Now, if you did not perform to the best of your ability in a prerequisite course, it might be a good idea to start off with scheduling in tutoring for that class because, hey, I got a B or a B minus in that prerequisite course. And I noticed that they're starting off where we left off with that last class. I need to go back and refresh my memory. I need to go back and strengthen my skills. I need to go back and revisit that material to see where I could enhance my skills and ability and knowledge as it relates to that prerequisite course. So when I'm in this class, I'm not struggling. It's okay to go up to the professor and say, hey, I noticed that the prerequisite course for this class was this. This is the grade that I earned in the prerequisite course. I want to make sure that I'm starting off on a good foot in your class. What materials or what topics from that prerequisite course are most important? And are you available for office hours in order to help me strengthen those skills? Or do you have a teaching assistant that you recommend? Do you recommend a tutor? Do you recommend me going to the student writing center? What recommendations do you have for someone who may not have scored the highest grade in the prerequisite course, but they want to make sure that they're successful in your class? What recommendations can you give to them? Are there resources online? Are there open educational resources? Is there a book that I should be aware of? Are there a set of journal articles that I should consider in order to help get me up to speed to ensure that I am successful in that class, in your class? And so it's okay to have that conversation with the professor or the instructor, the teacher. It's okay to talk to your classmates. It's okay to say, hey, I know I'm gonna need some help when I get in here because that last class, I was just making it. And I know I need to be successful in this next class coming up. That depends on that last one. So let me set myself up for success. And while I only have class 2 or 3 times a week, let me schedule my own tutoring sessions so that I am learning alongside the current lessons to help me along my way. And so those are some recommendations that I have for you when it comes to others seeming like that they're further along than you are. Don't necessarily concern yourself with how far ahead they are. Ask them how they got where they are and their level of comfort. And perhaps they can be your near peer accountability buddy with that class so that they could check in with you. Maybe they're not available to tutor you per se because they are learning this new material, but perhaps they could say, hey, you want to make sure that you check out X, Y, and Z. Hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Perhaps you can check in and say, hey, I'm not feeling so great on this part. Is there a resource that you recommend in terms of getting additional support? So have conversations with people, your classmates, your teachers, your teaching assistants, tutors, the writing center, learning centers. A lot of learning is dependent upon understanding how to break down big ideas into smaller, manageable pieces so that when it comes time to assemble them, you're able to do so in a coherent, in a concise manner so that you can explain what you know to an 8-year-old or your grandmother. And that way, you have a good grasp on the information. And so a learning center can help you with that regardless of the discipline. So those are some recommendations that I have for you as it relates to that question. Let's move on to the next one. How can I use tools like AI or the internet to help me learn without feeling like I'm cheating or cutting corners? I would recommend using AI or the internet like a thinking partner. I would recommend using it as a place to brainstorm. I would recommend using it as a place to seek out additional resources for help in terms of practicing the material. And so you can ask, I've said this last week, but you can ask AI to play a role. So whether that role is a colleague, whether that role is a classmate, whether that role is a professor, and ask them to quiz you or to test you or evaluate you on your ability to answer 20 questions that are aligned with the learning outcomes that are in your course syllabus for that class. See how you can think with AI in order to figure out what topics are of interest to you. If you have a project or a research paper, or you're writing your thesis or dissertation, run some ideas past it and see what some options are in terms of different areas to explore. And then go to the library and coordinate with your librarian. Go to the library and go to their database system. Go to the library and find out if there's material that you can use in your research paper, your thesis, your project that can support you along the way. Use AI or the internet as a place to brainstorm. Use it as a place to get feedback. And make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, you're not relying on it to give you the answer. If you are just asking it to answer a question from your homework, if you're just asking it to write your paper, that's not going to be the best way to use that tool when it comes to demonstrating that you learned something. In the end, if you are in class, if you are in school and the goal is for you to earn a degree or certificate that says you are able to demonstrate X, Y, and Z, you want to be able to have those skills in your possession and not just have something spit out a product for you to use and it says that you have those skills. I do recommend the use of AI as a thinking partner, having someone to bounce ideas off of. But then you take that material, you don't just run with it. Take that material and run it by other people. Take it and run it by the library. Take it and run it by other articles. Take it and run it by your resources that you have for class. Take it and see how it compares. Does it add to what you're able to understand about the material? Does it allow you to see a different perspective? Ask it to generate something for you to evaluate and see how it aligns or lines up with what you're learning in class. Are you able to decipher or identify gaps in logic? Are you able to sift out the fluff? Where are the faults and the errors in what's being presented to you? Are you just taking it wholesale, or do you recognize that there's something missing? Are you able to determine what is missing based on what you're responsible for learning, based on what you're responsible for knowing, based on what you're responsible for being able to do? So I recommend using AI and the internet as a tool, just like you would a calculator, just like you would a thesaurus. Use it as a tool, but don't shortchange yourself and skip to the end by saying, hey, I'm in a class. This is the assignment. I need to write a paper. Can you write me a draft? That's not going to work in terms of building your ability to demonstrate what you have learned in a class. So see how you can use it as a thinking partner as you prepare, as you draft, as you plan. Perhaps you need it to help you develop a schedule of what to do in terms of your studying. Perhaps you're responsible for many things and you need help organizing. Perhaps you need help in terms of making sure that when you are articulating a thought or an idea, making sure that there are no gaps or holes in your logic or knowledge. And so you can have practice questions and practice study sessions with a generative AI tool. You can use the internet to check out what others have had to say, but you need to be able to demonstrate those student learning outcomes on your own. And that's how I encourage you to use AI as a thinking partner, as a study buddy, as a resource to help you plan, as a resource to help you find other resources, as a tool to help you break down those big ideas into smaller pieces so that when you are reviewing material, you're able to manage it in a way that will help you along your way by keeping you from feeling overwhelmed or like it's just too much to handle. How do I stay motivated when there's no structure, deadlines, or feedback pushing me forward? To this, I say you need to determine for yourself what your goals are and encourage you to seek out those things that interest you most. So, if you are in a PhD program and you have completed your comprehensive exams, your testing, your qualifying exams, if you have nothing left in terms of coursework to do, and now the timeline is on you, I recommend that you set your own deadline, that you set your own timeline. Take a look at your finances, take a look at your graduate research assistantships, take a look at your fellowships, at your funding. How much time do you have left? When would it be best for you to finish? Now, for me, I had a maximum of 7 years to get it done. I also worked full time. And so I knew that I needed to pace myself so that I wouldn't burn out. Now, after I finished my comprehensive exams and the timeline was there for me to do my proposal, I wanted to make sure that I had a good grasp on the literature. And so I continued to build my literature review, and then I developed my proposal. Between the time of completing my comprehensive exams and my prospectus, which was my proposal for my dissertation, I had to pivot and make a change. And so I was running out of time. I needed to graduate by May of 2022. And I was looking at 2021 as being the time that I needed to complete my proposal so that I could actually move forward with my dissertation and collect my data and wrap things up. And so while I didn't necessarily have a deadline set by my department chair per se, because I could have done it at any point during the 7 years, I had a hard stop. And so that was my ultimate deadline and push that I worked against. But here's the thing, the pace at which I moved was not necessarily clearly defined. And so I had to set that for myself. And I defended my prospectus or my dissertation proposal in April of 2021. And I needed to collect my data over the summer so that I could analyze it and get my findings and complete my discussion, my chapter 5, and then turn in my dissertation in enough time so that I could defend my dissertation before the end of the spring of 2022. And so, in order to do that, I planned out my own deadlines and I essentially had to work backwards. So, if I wanted to defend by April of 2022, that means 3 weeks before that, I had to have my dissertation turned in to my committee so they could review it and say, okay, yeah, she can move forward. There were also administrative tasks in terms of getting my announcement to the graduate school office, and they had their own timeline. So I had to work with that timeline. So working backwards from that, how much time did that mean I had to write my discussion? How much time did that mean I would have to analyze my data? How much time did that mean I would need to limit myself in terms of collecting data? Because it was up to me to say when I started collecting data and when I would finish. And all of that information I had to include in my IRB so that IRB would know what my timeline and schedule will look like and the details of that. And so if you're not working with something that has a whole lot of structure or deadlines, and you're not necessarily getting feedback to push you forward, then you have to do it yourself. And you can do that by setting your own deadline and then planning backwards from there. What would it look like for you to complete in a reasonable amount of time, whatever project you're working on? And plan backwards from that point. Now, when it talks about if you don't have feedback pushing you along, you have to seek out feedback. And that feedback can come from many different people. Spread it around. Learn how to do your 60 to 90-second elevator pitch on the thing that you need help with. So if you go to a conference and you're presenting, feel free to talk to people afterwards and say, hey, you know what? I'm working on this. And what do you think about X, Y, and Z? Based on what you were able to learn from their presentation or them asking questions during someone else's presentation. Perhaps there's somebody that you could just sit down with for 5 to 10 minutes and you can get feedback that will help you along your way. I had a good committee in terms of I had a chair and a co-chair who would provide feedback in their own way. I also had an outside committee member who would provide me feedback in their own way. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I worked with them based on what they were willing to do. And so that outside committee member and my chair, who was my department chair, I would run 10 slides at a time past them. I would schedule meetings with them once a month, once every other month, so that they could see where I was going and get feedback from them that way. I had to seek out and ask for that feedback. I didn't wait until it was time for me to submit my proposal. Or, yeah, I didn't wait even before my proposal. I didn't wait until it was time for me to submit my proposal. I talked with them over the course of the entire time that they were on my committee. Now, with my co-chair, who was also my methodologist, she had a Calendly where people who were working on their dissertations could meet with her for 20 minutes. And they had to provide to her whatever writing that they were working on. So you weren't just showing up saying, hey, I need help. No, you sent her your draft a few pages at a time. We're not talking about having her read 100 or 50 pages at once, maybe 10, maybe 15 pages. And then when you showed up with an agenda as far as what you needed to go over. So I had to seek that out. I had to sign up on her Calendly, which means I had to plan on what I was going to turn into her before I scheduled the Calendly and before we met, which meant I had to make my own progress and show that I was making progress along the way. If you have a mentor, check in with your mentor. Use them to get feedback. Use them as an ask them for feedback and see how they're willing to do it with you. With me, when it came to my mentor, it was me talking it through where I was and where I needed to go, what I had left to do. And so you need to meet with people based upon what they're willing to do. You need to meet their expectations if you want to get feedback from them. So showing up empty-handed is not a good idea. If you have a mentor, if you have an advisor, if you have a chair, a co-chair, it's always a good idea to share with them your progress and show up with a plan when you request a meeting with them in terms of what it is you want to cover with them while you meet with them. And so, going back to the question, how do I stay motivated when there's no structure, deadline, or feedback pushing me forward? You have to create it. You have to create that motivation. Whatever you're working on, I hope you're passionate about it. Whatever that passion stems from, whether it's the goal of completing a program, whether it is being able to have access to more opportunities at the end of a project, at the end of developing X, Y, and Z, whatever that may be. Use that as your motivation. Whether it's to say, I completed something that I set out to do, hey, that is enough if you allow it to be. And so you're going to have to dig in and get that motivation for yourself. It's not necessarily something that someone can hand off to you. Now, what can help is getting outside inspiration, seeing other people make it. Go to others' dissertation defenses, go to others' prospectus or proposal defenses, go to conferences and see other people presenting their work so you can say, oh man, and get inspired by them. But that motivation, it's got to come from you. It really has to come from you when there's no structure, when there's no deadline, and if you're not getting feedback. because that motivation will help you seek out your own structure, plan your own structure, create your own deadlines, and pursue the feedback by showing up with a plan, showing up with what you have, showing up with drafts, showing up with your 60 to 90-second speeches or spiels on your work in order to get feedback to help you move forward along your way. And so that is my encouragement to you. Now, next, if my teacher or institution isn't providing what I need, how do I advocate for myself without getting labeled as difficult? Well, if your teacher or institution isn't providing what you need, I would say that you need to do a check. Is there a mismatch? Because it is possible that what you need might not be at that institution. So before you pursue a program, before you go into a boot camp, before you sign up for anything, make sure that what you need is there. If you particularly are going for a PhD program, make sure that there are faculty who have done research in your area of interest, because you can't just say you want to do something and there's no one at that institution who specializes in that something and then expect to get the support that you need, because the people who are at the institution, they are experts in their discipline and in their specific areas of interest as it relates to research. And so you need to look at their CVs. You need to take a look at what they've written. You need to see what the program includes in terms of scope, what do they cover, and if there's a match. Now, if you get somewhere and the person who you thought was going to be able to help you leaves, and now you don't have the support that you need at that school, then I would encourage you to see if there's someone in another department that can help supplement what that other person was bringing to the table in terms of expertise. For example, if you need someone, let's say you are in, I'm just going to use my program as an example. If you are in instructional technology and you have a strong interest as it relates to Black education and Black excellence, and there's no one in your department who has a specialty of Black education or Black excellence, then see if you can find someone in Africana studies, in African American studies, in Pan African studies. See if you can find someone who works with the diaspora, whether it's in sociology, whether it is in history, who you can add to your committee in order to bring that expertise that might be missing in your immediate department, and see if there's a combination you could create there. However, if your department is missing something or someone because the expertise aren't there, perhaps those expertise left and they're no longer there, then you might need to consider if you will be able to get what you need from that institution and make a decision that suits your best interests and in a timely fashion, because it's a commitment to be a part of a program, whether that's PhD, master's, undergraduate. It's a commitment. It's a time commitment, and time is money, and you need to make sure that you're using both wisely. And I want to encourage you to see whether or not there's a match. And if you got somewhere and the person left, see if it's possible for them to serve as an outside committee member, the person who left, and if they will be able to commit to being on your committee. But you cannot go to an institution and say, well, they don't have XYZ faculty, and then be upset that they don't have XYZ faculty. It's up to you to make sure that you're pursuing a program of interest at an institution that will meet your needs. And if they are not meeting your needs, you need to evaluate whether you can supplement it somehow by reaching out to another department, or if you need to perhaps pursue learning at another institution. And I do know people who stopped a program because an advisor who was the only person who was the expert in their specific research interest left. And so they were left without someone who they could lean on for support to help complete the program. And sometimes you have to know when to say, well, I tried, and so I'm going to pause here and check out my options somewhere else. But it's okay to pause. You don't have to stay where there's no one there to support you. All right. Now, this last question for today. How do I turn DIY learning into something I can actually show, like a project, portfolio, or proof that I learned something? That is a great question. I would recommend going to the Black-Liberation.Tech website. That's Black-Liberation.Tech, clicking on lessons and scrolling down to the career section, and then taking a look at those lessons. There are lessons that will help you build a portfolio. There's lessons that will help you work on a project of your choosing, and you can develop a project that's based on your interest in order to demonstrate the skill sets you have so that you are able to show someone, oh, by the way, I worked on this while you're in an interview or while you're talking to someone, giving your 60-second, 90-second elevator pitch about yourself so that they can say, oh, wow, okay. So you could have something on hand to say, look, I'm able to do this. Imagine what I can do if I were to work with you. And so Black-Liberation.Tech is my calling card. I encourage you to develop your own so that you can show people what you're able to do in terms of presenting material, creating content, and whatever skills you need to demonstrate as an expert in your field. With all that being said, thank you for listening to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I am your host, Dr. Renée Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, rate, and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.